Sup, Trojans. This one might run long a bit, but, make sure to share it and all that fun stuff. Mainly sharing. Sharing is apparently YouTube's favorite thing. Anyway, I just want to talk about multiple topics, with the big one being positional value. So, first up, James Bradberry. The stunning conclusion was that the Giants cut him, and he signed with the freaking Eagles. I mean, there are 31 teams in the NFL for him to go to, and he picks the Eagles. I don't know. Money. Tyreek Hill. Money. It changes things. I don't even know how much the Eagles paid him, but I'm sure they had to overpay to get James Bradberry. But anyway, he'll be, another good corner. I think they still have Darius Slay. So, they have two older, formerly elite corners, so that's what their secondary is looking like there. But yeah, that'll be the Eagles. They're probably the favorites to win the division, and they'll likely find a way to do something weird and stupid. But anyway, enough about that one. The other thing is the Giants' schedule. I don't know. Giants got a little screwed on the schedule, but also a little not screwed. Like, we're featured in, I would say 3 primetime games, but what sucks is 2 of them are against Dallas. So for 2 of them, we're just getting thrown into the Dallas train. Does Dallas have 8 primetime games? Does that mean? Come on. Not everyone wants to watch Dallas. There are a lot of Giants fans in the world that would like to see the Giants play on primetime. But no. we only have 1 traditional primetime game, Monday Night Football. The others are holidays or special things. And I'm considering the London game against Green Bay, a primetime game for this. So we have that, the London game in Green Bay. I'm considering London primetime. It's not primetime, but we'll take it. You take the 9:30 game. It's not, 9:30 a.m. You take it. London, big stage, a lot of people watching. Any Giants fans out in London, there's probably a few. I'm probably very excited, definitely going to get tickets, watch the games. It's great. I like that we have a London game. But I really feel like we could have used a Sunday night game. But I know they try to go with the Sunday night matchups. They try to... That's where they put what they think is going to be the best game. And I certainly see why they wouldn't think the Giants are going to have the best game for any Sunday night slots. But I don't know. It feels like they tried to side skirt us on some of those primetime matchups. And yeah, 2 of them are Dallas. And one of them, the other one's Thanksgiving. Thanks freaking giving. You just want to eat some food. But no, I got to make sure I have the Giants game on in the background as I'm hanging out with everybody. And then we have the classic, that Monday night game, Dallas. Last season we had the 2 Monday nights and the Thursday night. And the Monday night matchups, they always seem to lopside them against us. Daniel Jones is 0 for a million in prime time. Well, part of the reason is because it's not like we're playing the 2016 Browns or the 2016 and 2017 Browns in prime time. We're playing teams like the Chiefs and the Bucks last year. So it plays a part in that. Yeah, I like the Giants' schedule overall, but one more traditional primetime game would have been nice to see. Maybe another Thursday nighter, but whatever. It's fine. We'll put up some numbers this year. Maybe not in terms of the record, but I'm thinking the Giants will have a 7-8 win season. I know it's not the most controversial thing in the world because that's exactly where Vegas has us, but I think the Giants are due to have that 7-8 win season, beat some easy teams, put up some numbers, especially on offense, and have Kayvon Thibodeau get some nice sacks and a couple forced fumbles, maybe make everything look great, and then make the Giants more palatable for primetime next year. But all right, the big topic, and this is why the video might run long, is I wanted to go over positional values. Right, so Jair Alexander for the Packers just got a 4-year, $84 million contract, and that's what prompted me to want to discuss this. So I think that makes him the highest paid corner. Well deserved. But only 21 million. Like, I know. It's like, what? 21 million a year? That's so much. Oh, gosh. But he's what? He's getting like $1 million more than Denzel Ward, who just got the 20 mil a year to make him the highest. I think Jalen Ramsey's also getting 20 mil a year. So, I mean, of corners, those are the guys that deserve to be making 20 mil a year for sure. But my thing is, okay, wide receivers are making 30 million a year. But the guys covering them are only making 20 million a year at the top level. Like, something just feels off or wrong about that. So is wide receiver inherently more valuable than corner? I mean, I would assume that GM see it that way. I mean, I would assume the difference being a lot of defenses put their corner on an island and have the corner sit there so a wide receiver could just walk to the other side of the field and then be on the second guy and get a touchdown. But, I mean, for, like, zone coverage, like, you set the corner on, like, okay, you're taking this zone, this side of the field. But I would assume that might be the reason. But it just strikes me as really weird. I don't think wide receivers should be making $30 million a year. That's way too much. But I feel like the market is playing out with corners the way I would have expected. Like 20 million a year is a solid salary. It's pretty good. And that's, I feel like it should be like, oh, a corner getting 20 million a year. But I don't have that reaction when I'm seeing the inverse of that position getting 30 million a year. Like, it doesn't strike me as amazing. I'm like, oh, wow, corners did not catch up to wide receivers. It just, I don't know, it's really weird. But that also begs the question, right? So a wide receiver's making 30 million a year, but that would break, like, Aaron Donald is not making 30 million a year last time I checked. I think he's making, what, like low 20s, maybe mid-20s a year? He's not making 30 million. I mean, edge rushers left, like, when one... All right, and this is why I want to open that debate. So, like, in terms of positions in the NFL, obviously quarterback is the highest, right? You have the quarterback, and that's why, I mean, like, Patrick Mahomes getting, like, the 50 million a year, 10 years, huge money. That is huge money. At the time it was announced, like, unheard of. 10 years, $500 million. That is insanity. That is epic. Huge contract. You might as well just give him the team right now. But the thing is, that's a quarterback, right? That's why. So, like, quarterback can carry the team. A really good quarterback can carry the team, taking up all of that cap. I mean, you have to be a really good quarterback, and that's one of the things that's helped a guy like Tom Brady. I'm not saying that's the only thing. Like, Tom Brady is only good because he doesn't get paid $50 million a year. That's not the case, but it helps. When you're taking $15 million off your salary, okay, $15 million can buy you a pretty good offensive lineman. $15 million can buy you 2 decent offensive linemen. $50 million can buy you a pretty good edge rusher. $50 million can do a lot of things for the team, including getting a few other key pieces. And it comes into play. Or maybe it was 20 million a year, but, you get the point. So you have that set up, right? So a quarterback not taking a ton of money can certainly help the team. A quarterback taking a ton of money can also carry the team because the quarterback is touching the ball on every play, right? The quarterback goes to hand the ball off. Well, he has the ball first. You can get away with any other position on the field not doing their job except the quarterback. If you have a terrible quarterback, things can't happen. A wide receiver can never catch a ball. A quarterback can be like, all right, I'm not going to throw to that guy, I'll throw to this other guy. Play still works. The wide receiver cannot even be slightly open. Okay, I'm not going to throw to that guy, I'll throw to the other guy. An offensive lineman can completely whiff on a block, and the edge rusher's barreling at the quarterback. The quarterback can sidestep and throw on the run. It can still be a touchdown play. Quarterback can also juke the guy, run it in himself at that point. The running back on a running play can do nothing. Running back can run up the middle, get tackled at the line of scrimmage, or lose 4 yards. Well, then guess what? The ball's going to the quarterback, and the quarterback can make something happen to make up for that. It's the one, and I guess using that example, technically you could just run the ball all the time. But the idea being the quarterback is definitely the most important. And the running back position is another one I want to talk about that has not panned out well as they go for these large contracts. But quarterbacks going for these large contracts, it still kind of works out, right? You have Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he was getting paid like $30 million a year. I mean, NFC Championship team. I mean, they didn't win it, but, they were in the game. Aaron Rodgers is in the playoffs every year, getting paid solid money on the second contract. Russell Wilson, bad example. But Patrick Mahomes, on the contract, was still able to get into the playoffs. Josh Allen, couple years in the contract. The team's just getting hot on the Bills. I mean, that $30-40 million a year is able to pan out. The $50 million a year is a little bit of a step up on that, and that seems to be where teams are going, like with Deshaun Watson getting the fully guaranteed huge amount of money, and Aaron Rodgers, Pat Mahomes, right? Those guys are getting the big money at quarterback. But the quarterback can carry the team. The quarterback can make up for that. Any other position, it's tougher for them to make up for that. But then your second most valuable position on the team is the position that directly affects the quarterback. It's your edge rushers and your tackles, right? So quarterbacks are likely to be taken like first overall. And these are other positions that are very likely to be taken first overall. The edge rushers and the tackles. Left tackle or the edge rusher. A star edge rusher. Like Myles Garrett in 2017. Guys like that. They're going to go first overall. They're important. You can affect the passer. And these guys, historically, have been paid huge amounts of money on the team. Right? It's no surprise that the Giants paid Larry Williams $21 million a year if they thought he could have done better than he did in his 2020 season in his 2021 season. Well, he didn't. So now it looks like we're paying an average defensive lineman $21 million a year. Not ideal. That could have gotten us a star corner at that rate. But the edge rushers, it's your second most valuable position, or edge rusher and left tackle about tied for your second most valuable position on the team. You would argue that the left tackle is more important because you need to protect the quarterback's blind side. But then the edge rusher is just the other side of that coin where you're taking out the quarterback's blind side. So those guys are normally your second highest paid on the team. But what's weird about this wide receiver thing is that they've trumped that. They've gone above that. And that is something I find really weird. And that's why I feel like the wide receiver contracts are a bubble. It's going to be like the running backs. Right, like Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, guys getting huge running back contracts, and then the running back's not carrying the team. The running back needs a full offensive line to block. A quarterback could technically make a play happen with no offensive line. I don't recommend it, but it can happen. Well, not no offensive line. You need the center to snap the ball, but other than that, quarterback can technically do everything on the by themselves. So, wide receiver, it feels like a bubble. All right, the $30 million a year Tyreek Hill deal, the almost $30 million a year Devontae Adams deal, I feel like that is not good for the overall health of the team. I feel like that's a bubble. I feel like that's going to fall apart. I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I'm just saying that it's going to get tough when it's like, oh, okay, so now we're paying a quarterback $50 million a year, and we're paying a wide receiver $30 million a year. That is almost half of the salary cap on two guys on offense. And then what? Then you have to pay your left tackle huge money. Or, I mean, you'd probably have to take a shortcut somewhere. You'd probably have to do something else. So what? Then you have no other good wide receivers. You have a worse offensive line. And then what? Then the rest of the money would be spent on your defense to have the star edge rusher and star corner. And then what? Then you can't get a good other edge rusher as good of another corner. I mean, that's why the salary cap is a very huge thing. But I feel like there's certain positions you can sort of cut corners on, and that's why I feel like wide receiver is also one of those positions where you can cut corners on. Edge rusher, left tackle, supremely important. Quarterback, supremely important. That's why you see these guys go top 5 all the time. But then you start to get into secondary positions of the corner and the wide receiver. It's a secondary. It's like the secondary tier of positions, the corner and the wide receiver, because they rely on things to go right for them to be able to do their job. A corner is going to have a tough time covering a guy for 10 seconds if there's no pass rush. A pass rusher can get to the quarterback quick. A pass rusher could get to the quarterback in 2 to 3 seconds if some things go right. Maybe even sooner if they're just not blocked. But an edge rusher can get there pretty quick, and the corners sort of just standing there could allow the play to last that long. And that would allow, the edge rusher does not need a ton of time to get there if they're really, really good. They're already in the quarterback's face. So, like, in the extreme scenario, I'm not going to say there's no corners on the field because then the quarterback, pretty easy. But if there's just a corner on the field, just, like, standing there, the wide receiver is going to step forward to run the route, and that's going to be quick. The edge rusher's coming around the outside, dominant block win. The quarterback's feeling that pressure already because of how instant this happens. The wide receiver can make a cut and be wide open, but if the quarterback's having that pressure, that's going to affect the throw. That's going to affect a lot of things. The quarterback's on the run at this point. And if the edge rusher is really quick and you have more of a pocket passer, quarterback might be on the ground that quick. Extreme scenario, but the extreme scenario on the other side is there's no pass rush. Or let's say, I'll bump it up a bit. There's a little bit of a pass rush. The line's moving back a little bit. But then the quarterback just runs outside of the pocket and then just stands there for 10, 15, 20 seconds maybe. Is long enough until a guy's open. I don't know a cornerback in the NFL that's going to be able to just hold down a star wide receiver, or not even a star wide receiver, a solid wide receiver for 20 seconds. You'd think somewhere in there a guy's going to make a cut and do something elusive and get open and all that time, and that's the other extreme. That's why the corners and wide receivers, they rely on things to happen. So they're secondary position, but they are on the line of scrimmage. They are another position that is right there on the line of scrimmage affecting things, which does make them more valuable than like a running back or a safety. All of this is my opinion, but it makes them more valuable than a running back or a safety, because the running backs and safeties are on the line of scrimmage. They aren't able to directly affect things on that line of scrimmage. And and then that's where you get into really these secondary positions. I wouldn't dare reach for a corner or a wide receiver. I would take a good one as I see them. I think you can find great corners and wide receivers. It's a very abundant position. You're better off finding them in the second round or just paying a guy like $10 million to be pretty good instead of paying a guy $30 million to be great. Because at $30 million, I can get 3 good corners. And then, boom, I have 3 good quarters. That's my entire secondary. And then I can turn around and pay my edge rusher $25-30 million a year. And then that guy's going to be able to get to the quarterback. And then I can pay my quarterback $50 million a year because that's how much quarterbacks want nowadays. And then there you go. And so now I want to go down that totem pole even farther and look at the running backs and the safeties. So safety contracts have been pretty tame. I can't think of a safety contract that's blown my mind away. I mean, like Landon Collins, just because he was a former Giant, was making like $15 million a year. It was like 6 years, $84 million, if I'm remembering it correctly. And that's not a ton. I mean, that was a big contract at the time. I mean, this is several years ago. That was a big contract at the time. That's not a ton. And I don't think I've seen a safety contract that's come out like a $20 million a year or anything. I may be completely wrong, but I haven't seen that. Safeties are not seen as valuable of a position as compared to corners. Because they're not on the line of scrimmage. They're not directly affecting a wide receiver getting into their break, getting into a motion, getting into their cuts. Like, they're not directly stopping things. They're there as a help to the corner that gets beat, and then the safety has to come down and help out. Safeties are really valuable. You really want to have some good safeties. I mean, Xavier McKinney, Logan Ryan, and Jabril Peppers as a safety trio is pretty good. It's good to have good safeties, but I don't recommend throwing like a top 5 NFL draft pick or $30 million at a safety. A safety can be really good, but they're not really able to affect the game that much. So that's why you see, like, we got Xavier McKinney early in the second round. That is the perfect time to draft a safety. Second round is really where you're looking to get a lot of these. Second, third round is really where you want to get a lot of these like B-tier positions. And I'd put safety as like an upper C tier maybe, or like lower B tier in terms of things. But then I was mentioning the tackle and the edge rusher, right? Well, then you have the inside of the offensive line, and that's sort of where you get into that third tier positions as well, is where you sort of get in that same realm of the safety. But also, or maybe I would put them, I would put like corners and stuff at like a B tier, right? With edge rusher, left tackle being A tier, and then quarterback being A plus. Quarterback is stupid important. And then you jump all the way down to like B plus for the wide receivers and corners, and then you'll have like B minus for these guys, or B minus for the inside of the offensive line and the defensive line. They're right there on the line of scrimmage. A defensive tackle can be huge for the team. I think that's technically what Aaron Donald, Leonard Williams are. They're technically defensive tackles. But these guys can be huge for the team because they're doing the exact same thing as what's happening on the edge. But it tends to have less of an effect because you're doing it a little bit slower. You're having that same push. You're like a really great defensive tackle's coming at you right up the middle. It's the same push, but they're bigger because you normally have to push 2 guys out of your way. They're bigger. They're coming at you slower. You have more time to react. The edge rusher is going off of quickness. The edge rusher is the guy that's more likely to get to you in the 2-3 seconds. The defensive tackle is more likely to get you in that 3-4 seconds. They got to push some guys out the way first. But once those guys are pushed out the way, you have a 300-pound guy coming to do one thing, and that's get you on the ground. I mean, it's pretty scary. And then you have the guards there preventing that exact thing from happening. So I'd put those as like that lower B tier position. And then, like I said, the safeties are sort of that like lower B tier, upper C tier position. Then honestly, one of the lowest positions at this point is the running back. It is stupid awesome to have a guy like Saquon Barkley on the team. It is great, but the Giants can't afford to pay Saquon Barkley $20 million a year. It wouldn't help the team the way it needs to. Now, if Saquon wants to take $10 million a year, sign me up. If Saquon wants to take $50 million a year, I'm still in on that. But it would have to be a little bit shorter. Running backs can't take these like 7-year contracts because anything can happen. I mean, you see like what the Steelers did with a guy like Le'Veon Bell. I mean, you hit him with the franchise tag, and then you hit him with the franchise tag. And then that's all you can do at that point. Because you don't want to risk. You can't pay a running back all that money, and then what? They get injured, they fall off. Running backs can fall off the face of the earth out of nowhere. You don't see it that the same way as other positions. And that's another reason how these positions sort of come less valuable, is if they're able to fall off the face of the earth out of nowhere. I mean, corners can certainly do that, but normally you would see a little bit of a decline. Wide receivers can certainly do that, but again, normally you would see a little bit of a decline. Quarterbacks can, all these other positions, you normally see a little bit of a decline. It feels like running backs are almost the only position where it happens like instantly. It's just like, oh, this guy's all of a sudden not producing. This is weird. And it's all about what each position relies on. And that's why it gets weird when you start talking about like salary cap and a position like wide receiver getting all of this money. It is a serious bubble. And I know I keep saying this, but I find it so wild that wide receiver seems to be the second position to blow up. I mean, you can point to several things. I mean, likely it's just the Jaguars paying Christian Kirk $20 million a year. I mean, that is top wide receiver money. $20 million a year. At $20 million a year, I want to get the Jalen Ramsey, the Jared Alexander, the Denzel Ward of wide receivers. At $20 million a year is what I should be paying Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. But no, they're getting paid almost $30 million a year. There's $10 million more than they should even be getting paid, in my opinion. That's insane. I mean, like I said, $10 million a year can get you a solid corner. I mean, $10 million a year isn't getting you these elite guys, but $10 million a year can get you a solid corner that can cover most wide receivers in the NFL. $10 million a year can get you a solid wide receiver that can beat most corners in the NFL. $10 million at each position for each of the starters, or not each of the starters, but for, like, if you were to spread $10 million around the roster, you could likely have a pretty good football team. If you're going around and you're like, ooh, star here, star here, star here, star in a weaker position here, oh, okay, that's it. Now I have to give everyone else $2-3 million a year, and there we go. That's the salary cap. You're likely not doing as well. Unless, of course, you're drafting amazing. You just have like 5 second-round picks, and you're picking up Devontae Adams, Jared Alexander, and Xavier McKinney's left and right. You just, like, those are the guys you're drafting here. The positions in the NFL, they're getting weird. They're getting blown up out of proportion. It's out of whack. And I think this whole thing's going to come crumbling down. The whole wide receiver thing. I think it's going to come crumbling down. I think that's going to blow up. Not in a major way. it's not like Ezekiel Elliott not rushing for 1,600 yards has been what has deeply affected the Cowboys. The Cowboys weren't good in 2020 because Dak was hurt. The Cowboys did better in 2021 when Dak was back. I mean, that is what I see as the direct correlation in this. Not Ezekiel Elliott not rushing for a ton of rushing yards. But it hurts. It hurts things when you pay a guy a ton of money and you don't get that elite production. It's hurting the Giants with Larry Williams. Trying to make up for it by getting a guy like Azeez Ojulari in the second round and a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, top 5. Edge rusher is what you want, top 5. Tackle is what you want, top 5 as well. The fact that we got these two positions as what the Cowboys had ranked as number 1 and 2 on their draft board. We got those guys. We got 2 top 5 guys at these positions. At the crucial positions is huge for the Giants. And if you have all of these positions, all of a sudden you end up with like a situation like the Titans where it's like, maybe our quarterback doesn't need to be great. The quarterback just needs to be good. And then you can just have a good quarterback taking your team to the playoffs. Or at that point, just allowing the team to get to the playoffs. The quarterback just has to let the team get to the playoffs. The quarterback just has to get the ball to the right guys, and the team can do great things because everything has been allocated properly. The right guys are getting paid the most money. But on the other hand, for an elite quarterback, I do think it makes sense to pay that guy $50 million a year. But that guy has to carry the whole offense on his back. That guy has to be elite beyond belief. And a guy like Pat Mahomes can clearly do that. But Pat Mahomes, in the last Super Bowl he was in, has shown that it's pretty difficult to do that with no offensive line. Or a weak offensive line. It's tough when you're getting pressure all the time. It's really tough to do anything when you're getting a ton of pressure. Now, I do think there is something to be said for having the elite quarterback and the elite wide receiver, as you see with the Bengals with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I think there is something to be said for that. But I think it is better to, instead of having $30 million on one of those wide receivers, I think you're better off spreading that money around and having 3 solid wide receivers. So the quarterback has the chance to spread the ball more. And I think ideally you don't have to pay a quarterback $50 million a year, but I think it is worth it in several situations. I think it is worth it in a situation. In a realistic situation. Obviously in Madden, I can throw to one wide receiver all the time and then pay that guy $50 million a year because, well, he's throwing up 5,000 receiving yards a year. But that's not happening. That's not happening in the NFL. And I don't even need to pay that guy $50 million a year in Madden because Madden just has a contract thing based on the overall of the player. So I have to overpay for an edge rusher that happens to be 95 overall, even though he's not getting any sacks for me, because I'm controlling a different edge rusher that I like more for whatever reason at like 80 overall that's getting me all the sacks. But digress on that. Madden is clearly not a well-polished, perfect game. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about these NFL positions. I knew this was going to run long, but I want to sort of get this all out there because I don't plan on uploading a ton. Now we're into the off season, as if I've uploaded a ton in the first place. I don't think I'm going to upload all that much. But I think diving into these contracts is very interesting. Obviously, the positions I left out are kicker and punter. And honestly, I could see elite guys at those positions getting paid a little bit more. I don't ever think it's worth it to draft one early in the draft. I think that's blown up in the face of every team that's done it. But I definitely see value in like being like, oh, this guy's really good. Let's get him in like the 5th round before too many teams think about it. Or even this year, you saw a bunch of punters go in the 4th round. I think the 4th round is where you can start to see, be like, this guy's going to be a great punter for 10 years. Let's lock him down. Let's get him in the 4th round. I can see that being a thing. Because punters, kickers, they seem to be everywhere, and you only have one of them on the team. It's a position where there's definitely an abundance of them that are able to do pretty well. I mean, kickers are more accurate than ever before, and you're seeing them out there, and that almost hurts their draft stock to a degree, because quarterbacks are the position where it's not just, oh, I can just swap out a quarterback easily. There's only one Patrick Mahomes. There's only one Aaron Rodgers. There's only one Tom Brady. There's only one of these, each one of these elite guys. There's only one of them. They clearly don't grow on trees. You know, you take a quarterback first overall, like Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence might still work out, but I mean, he's not elite. He couldn't carry the awful Jaguars. So what you? I don't feel comfortable paying him $60 million a year, which is probably what he's gonna want as the salary cap goes up in the next couple of years. If he's playing good. I mean, if you, at that point, like, you need to carry as the first overall quarterback. It's possible, but I need to see a carry. Didn't see that. But quarterbacks aren't growing on trees like that. There's a lot of good quarterbacks out there, but you can't just have good. You need to have good to great in most cases. And if you are just going to go for the good quarterback, I mean, that's fine. There's a bunch out there. Like, we have Tyrod Taylor on the roster right now. I think he's a good quarterback. You want the good to great quarterback somewhere in there, like a Ryan Tannehill. I think Ryan Tannehill is getting paid $30 million. Bit much, but, you know, to have a solid game manager quarterback that you know isn't going to throw the game away for you makes sense. Because a quarterback is that position. And, I mean, that's why I want to talk about this. I want to go over this. And you have these kicker punter positions. There's so many of them. And they all are fairly close. But the elite isn't, like, carrying the game. Justin Tucker. I mean, a guy like Justin Tucker that's going to win you a game by kicking a 66-yard field goal. I mean, Justin Tucker won that game. Justin Tucker increased the Ravens' record single-handedly by 1. I mean, not single-handedly, but I mean that no other kicker in the NFL has proven that they can do that, because he's the first one to make the 66-yard game-winning field goal. So you're at a very interesting spot with kickers, and I am very curious as to when the boom on kickers and punters will happen. I mean, they're getting paid, what, $5 million a year is what a good kicker's making? I think. I might be wrong. It might be like 8, but they're not making double digits out here. Not to my knowledge, at least. They are a fairly important position. I'm pretty sure it's a kicker that scored the most points in the NFL. Because a quarterback technically doesn't score the points because they're the passer. And a wide receiver is only catching so many of those. I mean, a wide receiver might average a touchdown a game. That'd be pretty impressive if you're able to average a touchdown a game. That's pretty good. Yeah, if you're getting a touchdown a game, that means you're getting 17 touchdowns a year. That's pretty impressive. Well, a kicker can kick 3 field goals in a game, and that'd be 9 points versus the 6. So it's a kicker that has the most points in the NFL history, I believe. May have gotten past, but I feel like I heard that statistic at some point. They're an incredibly valuable position because they come in at seemingly random times, but they directly put points on the board. Same thing with a punter. A punter can be a weapon. I mean, if you have a really good punter that's backing up teams on the 1-yard line every punt, that's impressive. But how much is that guy getting paid? You'd only ever pay him like $10 million a year at most. I mean, sign me up at that point. I mean, I wasn't planning to go in depth on that, but I felt like that was interesting. And, I mean, you can go up the totem pole of the positions. And back to basically the topic of this, I find it crazy that wide receiver has seemingly trumped edge rushers and left tackles in the pay. Elite wide receivers can make more than elite edge rushers and elite tackles. That is wild to me. That is insanity in the NFL. And the exact counterpart of the position is making $20 million a year, or $21 million a year. That is wild. The exact opposite of the position is making way less at the same talent level. I don't think that happens between left tackle and edge rusher. I think the left tackle normally, like if a left tackle gets like a bump in pay, I feel like normally I hear some defensive lineman gets that similar bump in pay. And edge rushers, I am considering like linebacker in that. I feel like I may have accidentally like forgot to mention that position. But if you're like a coverage linebacker, you're more in line as a corner. If you're a rushing linebacker, you're more in line as the edge rusher. It's all about what you're doing at that point. If you're the middle linebacker, you're more in line with the corner. Or even the defensive tackle maybe at that point, because an elite middle linebacker is only doing so much. But if you're also rushing the passer as a middle linebacker, then you are more in line as an edge rusher. It's all about what you're doing. It's all about what you're actually doing on the field. So in the position like linebacker, I would say that it deeply depends on what you're doing more often. If you're more often in coverage, then I would compare you more to somewhere between a safety or a corner. If you're rushing the passer more, I would say you're more of an edge rusher. Maybe an interior defensive lineman, but the elites at the interior positions have proven that they can make almost as much as those outside positions by being elite. There is just that gap down there of like what I would value at the highest because of it being the interior, not the outside in the scheme of things. But I will end it there. I think that was a full analysis of my thoughts on position. This could have been 12 videos, this could have been 20 videos. Who knows? I might come back to it if another contract makes me think about life. But I'll leave it there for now. Just not a lot of Giants content going on. Unless, of course, I want to cover random stories here and there, which I might do. But I want to get all of my opinions out on this topic now. I would be shocked if anyone listens to this whole thing, but if you do, leave a like, comment, and definitely share. This is a 2-time speed candidate. See you guys in the next one.